Yeah, Spider-Verse. So you saw it or did you saw?
I
the
haven't
first
seen
one?
it yet, but I've been meaning to because the first one was great.
Yeah.
I actually grew up on comic books.
Really?
So I pay attention to all the Marvel stuff, not because, you know, they've gotten pretty shitty recently, to be honest. Like Phase 5 has not been the best, but I grew up reading the actual comic books,
So you actually bought them and read them, huh?
Yeah, I actually went to this place called Unicorn Comics, and it was this family that had been owning it for 30 or 40 years, and they had everything.
Did people make fun of you back then, and then now it's become cool?
So I was in 8th grade. I'm 28, so I was in 8th grade when the Watchmen movie came out, and that's kind of when it became cool to like comic book movies, right? And I'm an illustrator. I've been drawing my whole life. I do a lot, but that was one of the things I've been doing forever. And I would just draw that smiley face with the blood splat everywhere, to the point where people couldn't really make fun of me just because I was embracing it so hard,
You you were just being you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You because your posters, your flyers. I know I said this to you, but I feel like I need to say it again. Mm-hmm. Best flyers in the game.
I appreciate that.
My God. So you started drawing when you were a kid?
Yeah. That was probably honestly the first. Yeah, that was the first form of art that I ever did, was drawing, illustration.
What got you into? You just started picking it up and you kind of had a knack for it?
I remember this so I was 6 in 2001, and I remember seeing the Harry Potter movie. Mm-hmm. It came out in November or something, and this was only 3 weeks after 9/11. This was a strange period of time, right?
Yeah.
But my mom bought me this Harry Potter themed diary, just with blank pages in it, and when I was a kid, because my sisters are 5 years older than me, I'd just be in the backseat. I'd just be driven wherever they're going. If they had soccer practice or they had whatever. So I just started sketching in this Harry Potter diary instead of actually writing in it, And as I got older, I just kept doing it more and more and more, to the point where all my walls were filled with drawings and photos that I've been taking. So yeah, it started with drawing, and then it got more into photography. And then I got into music, and now I kind of just do everything.
Yeah. You seem like an art guy.
Yeah. So I'm an art school dropout, but it's funny because now I have 2 psychology degrees.
Jesus. Okay. So wait, you went to college for art school and then pivoted?
Yeah. So kind of familiar story now, but depression, anxiety, the works. College wasn't really for me. I actually had a band that almost got signed when I was 18.
What was the band called?
It was, at the time it was called the Echoes and Flowers, and now it's called Sergeant Starling.
Okay.
We're actually releasing music for the first time in 8 years next week, so it's kind of perfect that I'm here right now.
I'm gonna try to.
Yeah, I know I'm saying a lot at once, but we can go through it in sections.
Yeah. So it sounds like as a kid you get the Harry Potter notebook, and that's where the art starts, and you're just drawing naturally, and it builds from there. Then, so you've been about 6. So then, as you get older, was it in middle school you started music? Yeah.
So in 7th grade, my friends needed a bassist in their band. I didn't even know how to play bass, So I got one of those jazz squires from the local guitar center, and I put too many pictures of me on MySpace of playing the squire.
Oh,
bass.
MySpace.
Yeah.
Oh, the MySpace days. Okay.
Yeah. So but it was just a shitty pop punk band, and I didn't even really like pop punk, And then there was cooler bands in town, and then I eventually associated myself with them, and I was in legitimate rock bands, I guess, as a teenager in high school. But that was more psychedelic rock, not jam band stuff, more rooted in 60s psych rock and garage rock and stuff like that.
Were you guys doing the drugs with it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What did you?
I mean, I'll be honest, I started young. Yeah. I started doing drugs when I was 14.
May I ask what?
Yeah, so mushrooms,
14?
Yeah, smoking weed, drinking. But it wasn't I was doing it every day at that point.
Sure.
But I will say that I've been smoking pot every day for way too long now. Yeah.
I have the same thing. I've been smoking since I was later than you, though. I started smoking and drinking around like 22.
Yeah, that's when I really got into drinking. Like I hated drinking as a teenager. Like I did it sometimes, but it wasn't like a thing that I really liked.
When I meet people that have like drank when they were younger or smoked, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
When you say you did mushrooms at 14,
yeah,
what the fuck experience was that like?
Well, I was hanging out with seniors when I was a freshman. It's kind of ironic because as I've gotten older, people assume I'm younger. But when I was a teenager, people assumed that I was older.
I think ultimately that's good, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I was hanging out with seniors, and that's how I got good weed. Like that's how I got good drugs, and like they were kind of just treating me like they're equal. So they're like, "Hey, you want some of these mushrooms too?" Yeah. And I was just like, "Why not?" You
didn't know what they did?
No, I knew what they did.
Oh, okay.
I guess I was like, the type of music that I was listening to was also similar to this. So it's kind of like we wanted to understand the mindset of the musicians that my friends and I were listening to. Yeah. And it's kind of felt like natural. And like I never did powders or like white drugs or like truly hard drugs, like until I got older. Never touched heroin in my life. Yeah. I've had a lot of friends, we can get in that later, that have, but me personally, like I never have. So like my like defense always was just like, I'm just doing psychedelics, like they're healthy for you, like they're fine. Even as a teenager, even though I probably was like fucking up like my brain development and all that.
Yeah, I took shrooms for the first time when I was like 26, 27. I think what it is taking them older, having more life experience built behind it. I'm trying to understand what it was like. Like, what was your first shroom experience like at 14?
So the first time, it was just super giddy. Okay. The first time it was just like, we had just watched like that Doors biopic, like the Jimmy Morrison thing and like
Colors.
Just again, like I said, the music was more rooted in 60s psych rock. So like that was kind of like where our brain was at too. The second time was actually a bad trip.
What happened?
So we were in my basement, me and my best friends at the time, who I was also making music with at the time. And me and my friend John, R.I.P., we were doing this just really goofy thing with our fingers, like his hand and my hand, and we started like doing this wave. We're like, whoa, man, like we can feel each other, dude, like energies, just like stupid, like high shit, right? Yeah. And our friend, I'm not going to say his name right now, but like our friend, he was just like, he goes up right away and he's like, I want to try. Like, and my buddy was just like, nah, dude, like, we're in this right now, man. Like, don't worry about it. He's like, no, man, I want to try. And she was like, no. And then they just started bickering over something like so silly. But because you're like high on mushrooms, like this, like, little drop of negativity just like spiraled out of control, and the next thing you know, all three of us are like in our own heads, like in our own bad trip over something so silly. But we're teenagers, like we're hormonal, like we all have our own shit going on, so we immediately go into our heads about other stuff, right? And we're like, okay, let's just try to go to bed. So like we turn the lights off. This after a few hours of tripping, by the way. So we're like, let's just try to go to bed. We turn the lights off. Like again, we're sleeping in my basement, like I said. And none of us could sleep. I think we were all just like having bad trips. And what I kept seeing whenever I closed my eyes was this like huge W, like this huge white W. And I woke up the next day and I realized that like this huge W stood for worry.
The next day that clicked.
Yeah, because it's like in the moment I'm too stressed. I'm too just paranoid. I'm too like to actually comprehend what's going on. Next day I realized it's this like vision of this W that I keep seeing stands for worry. And I realized at the age of 14 that like all of our fears are based in worry, and then if we can overcome fear and like overcome our anxiety, that we can accomplish like so much. Like I realized you could ride that wave of anxiety. I didn't have the term yet for riding the wave of anxiety, but I understood that like if you can accept it, if you can radically accept it, which is now a therapy term I also know, but if you can like radically accept things and like ride the wave, you can control your worries, you can control your fear.
It's funny, man. I get what you're saying. I just can't imagine that at 14. Like having the maturity to get it, you know what I mean?
Well, that was what was interesting about, at least I think this is maybe more common than I think, but I had this like duality as a teenager, right? Obviously there's this huge side of me that's still child, that's still immature, but there's also this side of me that kind of just like understood what is. you know what I mean? Like, because before I ever did psychedelics, I was someone that was questioning my faith. Like I was raised Catholic, you know, I actually read the Bible, you know, I actually.
Were you like a Bible kid?
I'm like this with everything. Like when I get into something, I like kind of obsess about it. I kind of like really go head first into it and want to figure it all out. I'm a nerd, like at the end of the day. And like we were talking about comic books, but it's like, I'm not that kind of nerd. Like I'm a nerd with everything, you know, I just like being informed about whatever I'm interested in. Right. So when I was younger, you know, I was forced to go to religious ed every Sunday. I was forced to go to church all the time. I was like, if I'm going to be doing this, why not actually invest it, like myself into it and understand it? And the more that I understood it and the more that I became closer to it, I was opposed to it. I was questioning it. And like I said, before I ever did drugs, I went up to my mom and my dad and I was just like, I understand like what they're trying to say and like what's happening here, but I'm against organized religion and I'm against a lot of the stuff that's going on within the Catholic Church. And, you know, I think there's a lot of like hypocrisy and like there's a lot of just stuff that goes on not only within like Catholicism, but within like most religions. And, you know, I actually don't really believe in like a lot of the stuff that these stories are saying, even though the principles are often ring true. And I just didn't want to get confirmed, you know, like at 13. And I ultimately did. You know, because my parents, because I had a really good English teacher when I was in 8th grade, and my dad's also. People are weird when I admit this, but you know, it's my story. It's like my dad's a lawyer, like he's a retired lawyer, and he used to be a politician as well.
Oh, okay.
A suburban politician.
Oh, okay. Not like you're not in the Senate or anything.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. Okay. Like, I'm from Chicago suburbs. But I've been downtown for about a decade.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what was I saying though?
You were talking about your dad. It seemed like it has something to do with religion and where you...
Oh, so it was funny because I know how to argue and I know how to have like a good debate because of him, right? But I had this really good English teacher at the time that said, you need 3 points to make a solid argument. You know, you can't just have 1 or 2, because think about it in like essays, like a persuasive essay. You can't just have 2 paragraphs in your persuasive essay. You need 3 paragraphs. You need like 3 solid points to win your argument, right? So I go up to my dad and I'm like, Dad, give me 3 reasons why I should get confirmed.
Before he answers, so your parents are devout, or are they Sunday Christians? They
like Easter, Christmas, like act like they're holier than they actually are type.
Okay. So you called him out on his bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I go like, give me like 3 reasons why. He's like, well, it'd make your mom happy.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, for sure. And then he's like, if you ever want to get married in the Catholic Church, like when you're older, like you won't have to do it then, you can just do it now. And I'm like, okay, what's the 3rd reason? And he's just like, and I was like, shit. So like I ultimately was just kind of like, I was a kid, you know, I ultimately didn't have the final say in it and I was like forced to do it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to like express like the difference between how my parents responded. So like my dad actually taught Sunday school for like 7 years when he was younger. Yeah. So he was like kind of cool with me questioning all this shit, you know, like even though like he wanted me to go through with it, he was actually happy that I was questioning all this stuff. My mom, well, both her parents are passed away, and I think she just wanted like the legacy to be carried on. So I'm gonna like go away for a second. She came up to me and she like was like, "You will believe in God. You will." And like I'm like on the floor like crying like, "Oh
Jesus."
Yeah. So yeah, that was the different approaches from my parents.
Yeah, I prefer your dad's. No offense to your mom. Are they both still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's funny because they're split up, so I guess they weren't that devout.
Fair enough.
Catholics.
Are they? Do you think are they gonna watch this?
I don't know, but you know what? It's my story, so like I'm comfortable talking about my family and all that.
As long as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
That's it's funny because the way your dad used his logic wasn't even about religion itself, which is what it sounded like you were going for. You were trying to understand, like, why should I believe this? Not he sounds like a lawyer. He sounds like his mom will be happy. That's a really interesting angle. And when was the moment you were like, yeah, no, I'm done?
Well, I picked up the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Your parents must have been so fucking irritated at this. Okay.
I picked up the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and I realized that the 10 commandments in the Egyptian Book of the Dead are exactly the same 10 commandments that are in the Bible or the Torah, like, you know. And I was like, this is plagiarism.
That was your logic?
Well, my thing was just like, okay, so like one of my biggest things, I remember asking one of my Sunday school teachers, I was like, so if Adam and Eve is a true story, okay, and by the end of the Bible, you know, there's a whole world population. Can you tell me like what time, like how many centuries passed between Adam and Eve time and like, you know, the end of the Bible? And she said 1,500 years. And I was just like, okay, so you're trying to tell me that two people that had two sons, which means that they had to have an incestuous relationship in order to create more children, created a fully functioning world population in 1,500 years. And
how old were you when you said this?
I was 12 or 13.
Okay.
And they go, yeah.
Just very confidently.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's bullshit. You know, like, I'm like, that makes no sense. Right. And then, because there were certain people that were telling me like, you know, these are just ideas like to teach you lessons. And then there's other people telling me like, no, this is fact. Like, this is how it is. This is what, and I'm like, if y'all can't even make up your minds, then what are you really preaching here? And there was a priest that like went on this whole thing of like, if you don't believe in this, then don't get confirmed. If you don't believe in this, then don't get confirmed. If you don't believe in this, then don't get confirmed. And that was one of the things that I told my parents. I'm like, the priest is telling me not to get confirmed. Like it's funny because you like, I joke about it on stage and like, there's the whole fiasco with like priests and like what they do to kids. My priest was like, nah, get the fuck out of here. Like he wanted nothing to do with me.
I actually have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. So yeah, you were asking like what finally did it for me. It was me realizing that, you know, things just weren't clicking. Like the stories weren't clicking, adults weren't clicking. It just felt like I did my history lesson, you know, I saw how the Roman Empire was, you know, polytheist. And then I realized that, you know, Constantine took control and turned it into an empire, and he was the emperor. And then at that exact point, they went monotheistic, and it makes more sense because when you believe in one God, you can believe in one ruler, and then people get like into that mindset. And you know, that encouraged me to see through all the suburban bullshit, through all the patriarchy shit. It just made me see like through everything. And then I drop mushrooms like when I'm 14, and then I see through it like even more.
Right. Okay. So first off, I have two questions.
Sure.
If you hadn't have taken mushrooms then, do you think you would have changed all that? Do you feel like that experience led you on a path that is different than had you not?
Yeah, but not in the way that I approach life.
You would have approached life.
I think I'm naturally a philosophical person. I think I'm naturally an existential person. I think the drugs like emphasize my existentialism.
Sure.
But when I was a kid, you know, my parents would tell you this. It's like, I was always like, why is this the way this is? Like, why is this? Like, my main question was why? Like, to the point where my friends even made fun of me for it in middle school. They're like, Mike Regan always says, why? You know, and it's just, and I just want to know what's up. You know, I want to, like I said earlier, when I'm interested in something, I research it to like the utmost degree because I just want to understand what's in front of me.
I think it's really valid. I had a similar thing. I think I was more obnoxious about it. I think I wanted attention more. I was curious, but it sounds like you were asking those questions in good faith. You weren't asking questions to be an asshole. You were asking questions because you just wanted to understand.
Yeah. I think in life, I never really want to be an asshole, even if I come across as an asshole sometimes. But that's something I'm working on in therapy.
Do you think you come off like an asshole?
Not all the time.
Okay.
I think, shout out Caitlin and Maggie if you watch this. I think me and my sisters, I think we all have resting bitch face.
Really?
And we all have like these like furrow brows, you know, and it's just like, I'm stoned all the time, a lot of the time too. And I have social anxiety, you know. If someone comes up to me and says hello, I'm like the cheeriest motherfucker, you know. But I think, and this is a problem, I think everyone hates me before I actually, even if they don't know me, I just have this feeling that like they hate me.
Do you think that is, I mean, to go back to that big W, is that connected to worry?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like what's funny, and I think about this sometimes, is that like I learned this lesson when I was 14 that like most things come down to fear and like most things come down to worry. And my anxiety has just gotten worse and worse and worse
Since
and worse
then?
as I've gotten older. Yeah.
Is it because you have more tools now, you have the maturity, you have the life experience, you have the mushroom trips, and you know what to do? Why is it getting worse?
I think it's because, you know, before I came here, I was thinking like, how honest do I want to be on this podcast, right?
Whatever makes you comfortable.
And I think it's important to talk about what I'm about to talk about because I think other people can relate to it.
Okay.
So I found out a few months ago that I have borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
Do you know what borderline is?
I can make an ignorant guess, or you could just say,
what's your ignorant guess? I'm just
oh,
curious.
this will be fun. Okay. Borderline personality disorder from an ignorant man is, I believe it's an umbrella term. If I understand correctly, it's an umbrella term, and there's also a spectrum. So similar to like autism, you could be super autistic, or you could be like just kind of weird to society. So your borderline personality disorder could be you could be Hannibal Lecter, or you could be kind of a sociopath that doesn't hurt people. That's my weird little guess.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable talking about a lot of things, but I'm not going to get into like the details of like my parents' marriage or like everything that happened like in my house. But I will say that a lot of the stuff that happened behind closed doors fucked me up like as a kid, you know, having this like lawyer, politician father, you know, everything was perfect from the outside looking in. You know, we even have photos of us. We look like this like perfect like white American family. No, literally, like I asked my dad when I was younger, I'm like, what's your life goal? He's like, the American dream. I'm like, what do you mean by that? He's like, Leave It to Beaver, June Ward Cleaver. Like he literally meant that.
Yeah.
And he had that for like a long time until, you know, over time you just chip away at the painting, you know? But again, there was stuff going on in the background. My sisters are 5 years older than me. So it's kind of like my parents had like a duo, my sisters had a duo. And then I was kind of always just there in the backseat scribbling in my Harry Potter notebook, you know, while there's just like turmoil going around. And then, you know, I've fallen in love a few times and like, you know, there's times in those relationships where I'm the bad guy and there's times in the relationship where they're the bad guy. And then there's more nuance to it at the end of the day. And then I've had friends that have passed away, like friends that have unexpectedly died. And I've had betrayals, you know, like over time, like I've just had a lot of trauma where my therapist explained it to me where he said that borderline is a response.
So you can't be born with it?
So, I mean, people that have borderline tend to be depressed. They tend to have anxiety. Like, it's more of like a cluster of syndromes, you know? And borderline's like a weird term because it sounds like you're on the verge of like breaking or like you're on the verge of whatever. It should definitely have a better term or title. And I really struggled like accepting this at first because I was like, oh, there's something wrong with me. You know, because when I was younger, I was like, fuck it, there's something wrong with me. Like, who gives a fuck, you know? And now I'm like, I don't want there to be something wrong with me. Like, I just want...
Be normal.
Exactly.
Sure.
Quote unquote normal. And I know I'm never going to be, which is fine. it just made me feel like a bad person, right? It made, even though like, because I struggle with the nuance of who I am, you know, I love myself, but I also fucking hate myself, you know, and
Yin yang.
What's up?
Yin yang.
Exactly. And I try not to let the darker side of me overpower the light side, so to speak, you know? But it often does win. But I think when I finally accepted that, you know, borderline is a response to like the situations that I've been in, and that's why I have like a shifting sense of self. We good?
I'm just making sure that the levels are. You keep talking. I'm just make sure we're good.
For sure.
Okay.
The shifting sense of self, it happened, like you said, it's on a spectrum. It's like everyone's always questioning themselves, right? But when you don't have faith, you were talking about like faith earlier, when you don't have faith that the people around you, again, like you or like respect you, even if they do, like again, I don't want to talk like, I don't want to sound like I'm talking shit about my family, right? Because I've gotten closer with my parents over time, and like my relationship with my sisters is healthier than it's ever been. But I didn't feel like I had a support system growing up, and I've had falling outs with friends over the years for valid and invalid reasons, and I just don't really have a support system that I can rely on, you know.
Do you still feel like you don't? Have you built that community for yourself yet?
I feel as though it's always a work in progress. I feel as though, you know, getting into photography and getting into comedy and like doing music again and really, you know, investing my time and effort into art has allowed me to rebuild a sense of community and honestly like feel a sense of love that I've been yearning or longing to feel for a long time, because I tried to find that in romantic relationships for the longest time, and then when I realized that like you find that feeling in community, that's when I was like, okay, this is now I really want to put in the work for myself. Like I want to put that work in for me, because if I'm the best version of myself, then I can help others be the best versions of themselves too. And like it's just a give and take, and yeah. But just like kind of put a ribbon on that borderline like note is that you know, one, I'm working on it, you know. Two, it's like, your question, like, do I have a better support system now? Yes and no. Because we're all going through shit, you know. You know, where it's like you don't want to burden people, but you also want to be able to rely on people. And I think I try to show up for my friends and be there for my friends. And the more that I show up for them, I think that they're willing to show up for me. But also I have this certain sense of pride where I'm like, I can do this all on my own. I don't need you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're like very literally everything you've just said connects to me in a very personal way. Yeah. If whoever the consistent listeners are, they're going to be like, yeah, no, that sounds like a different version of what Aaron says. So I think I get you as much as I could. Yeah. I don't know the details, and I know we're not going to get into the unnecessary details of it, but I think I get you. I have a question. If you don't want to talk about it, then just we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So my friend John. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay talking about that. So John was my childhood best friend. Okay. We met in 3rd grade. He lived 2 blocks away from me.
I think you might need to choke up on the mic. There you go.
We good? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So John was my childhood best friend. We met in 3rd grade. He lived 2 blocks over from me. We had a band in high school together. He was the dude that I was like doing the finger thing with earlier. And we had a falling out in high school. but we always like loved each other. Like he was the closest thing to I had to a brother. And after like a year of like not talking, you know, I was just like, well, I have a different band now. You have your own band still. Like, let's just play a show together. Like, let's just play shows together.
What instrument did he play?
So he like when I was in his band, it was like he was the leader of it. You know, he wrote the music. He was the guitarist. He was one of the singers, not the lead singer, but like one of the singers. But he was always the lyricist, and like it was his band, right? Okay. And we had a falling out when I was like, it's not just your band, like it's our band, but you know, that's just old beef. It doesn't matter. And then, like I said, I formed my own band. Like I was like, let's play shows together. Like let's be friends. But you know, unfortunately, he was like further into drugs at that point. And I don't want to trash talk the guy. You know, he just was right. And then a lot of us went off to college, and he didn't. And he got hooked on heroin, and then he tried getting sober a few times, and then I thought I was always keeping an eye on him, but I always kept him at a distance too. And then I thought he was sober for the longest time, and then apparently he wasn't. And one night when he picked up a bag, there was fentanyl in it. And
how long ago was this?
We were probably 21 at the time, so like 7 years ago.
Okay.
7 years ago this July.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And first off, it sounds like I don't get the sense at all that you're bad-mouthing or anything like that. It sounds like you realized that you needed to set a boundary. You need to protect yourself from that energy, from what it sounds like. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that's like, to connect it to the borderline maybe.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, I had a lot of friends in high school, and then I didn't, because I was willing to be alone rather than surround myself with people that like were bringing negativity or like bringing me down. And I think that's become somewhat of a defense mechanism over the years, is that I isolate when things get tough, and then it turns into like a thing of pride. So yeah, boundaries are healthy, but it's also knowing about like how deep are you behind that wall.
Right. It seems like the theme is of this whole episode is the big W and balance.
Yeah.
It's about the feelings of worry and balancing everything, you know, making sure things don't get to the extremes. And no psychologist or psychiatrist, but borderline sounds like it's a disorder of extremes. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. See, I don't even fully understand it.
Okay.
You know, like I do, but I don't, because it's like, how I would personally describe it is like hollowness. It's not that I'm a hollow person or a shallow person. It's just that it's this feeling of never feeling quite satisfied. It's this feeling of like the yin yang of like knowing I have all this love for myself, but still believing that I'm not worthy of that love. And then, you know, remembering all the times that I was unworthy of the love, and then trying to remember all the times that I was worthy of it. And I just, yeah, I don't know. Do you have?
I have another question.
Yeah.
And it's also one of those on the paper questions. Again, you're welcome to not speak on it if you don't want to. I know you talked about it on stage.
This is funny because I love how this is just a shift. Yeah. This is a complete shift, folks. In topic, my sexuality.
Yeah.
So that's funny because people think I'm way more queer than I am. Like I do talk about it on stage, and I am queer, but I've never dated a man. I don't really have any anticipation of being in a full throttle relationship with a man, maybe. Yeah. But like I've predominantly dated women. I'm predominantly attracted to women. And there's a spectrum, right? I use they and he pronouns. I would consider myself pansexual or bisexual. People fight over that term, but I just, I love everyone regardless of their gender or their genitalia. But I am predominantly heteronormative, you know? I just think we live in this time where we finally have the words and nuance to describe how we feel. And I just want to be accurate to who I am. sometimes I want to drop that stuff from my set entirely, because I don't see it as a defining characteristic of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's plenty of people that are straight. They don't come out as straight. You know, it's like if I want to add a guy into a threesome with a girl, or if I eventually just want to like go all the way with a dude, like whose business is that? Like, why do I need to wear it on my sleeve? And it's like, I'm not hiding either, you know? And it's funny because people will come up to me and they won't talk shit, but they'll treat me differently after a set.
After they find out?
Yeah. And it's like, not in a bad way. It's almost like I respect you more. And I'm like, I get it. We live in this like time where like, you know, cis, straight, like white men, like it's not cool. Yeah. Like it's not cool anymore. And I get it. Like I fucking
it was cool for a really long time.
Yeah, and I get it. So I get that, like, you know, when I say that, it's like they're like, oh, okay, like you're different, you know? It just makes me feel weird.
It almost sounds like you don't want to come off like you're virtue signaling or trying to find a thing that you can latch onto. If that,
yeah.
And have you gotten any negative pushback to that?
No. Because like we live in Chicago and you know, and like, I mean, with my family, sure. Like I know my family loves me, but they just don't get it, you know?
Are we including everyone, sisters as well? Or is this...
Yeah, like my sisters and my parents. And again, not talking shit, just like they just never really picked up on it, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that intrigued me about you, so you were saying early on, so I guess we met in the Laugh Factory briefly.
Yeah.
You heard about the sign language stuff, that kind of perked your ears because that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And then the time, and I remember you kind of clicked into my consciousness, was West of Cali, the show, on West of, it literally was on the street, right?
Yeah.
I remember seeing that flyer and being so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very confident you are a producer in Chicago of comedy,
mm-hmm.
and put so much energy and effort into making the best possible show experience for the comedians, for the audience, how you present, all of it. It is you go above and beyond in your effort of your shows, and I want to dig into that. Like, is this, in learning more about you and getting more context, is this an outlet for you? Is it just kind of how you are with shows? Like, what's going on there? How did you start producing, and where did all that come from?
Well, as I said earlier, like, I've been in bands forever. Yeah. So when I was a teenager, something that was cool about my dad and about my family, at least my dad was cool with it, is that he'd let me have concerts at my house, like whether it was in the garage or like it was in the basement, because he liked knowing where I was, you know, and he's like, okay, even if there's like 40 people in my house right now, I have the situation under. Later in the days, he did not have it under control, but for a while, he had it under control. Yeah. Right. And I'm like very thankful for that. Like, I'm really appreciative of that. So I started like hosting concerts like when I was a teenager. And then there was a period of when I was like 19, I lived in an industrial loft that could house like 400 people. And my landlord hated it though, because we weren't of age and stuff. So those got shut down pretty quickly, but I was doing more concerts there. And then I just didn't have the place for the longest time. And I'm making music again, but I don't have a band again yet. Like I have a whole record that I'm going to be releasing, but I'm getting the musicians together for that right now. But when I moved into my current spot last year, it has this backyard. And I was like, well, I'm doing comedy now. Like, why the hell not? Like, let's just do a show. And then I was working at a bar last summer, and they were giving away free pews. And it was just like, okay.
Wait. You're working at a bar, they were giving away free pews.
Yeah.
Why? How? What?
So it's this place called the Honky Tonk in Pilsen, and it's just this massive place, and they just have all this old furniture, and like they were using pews like for the back pool hall, like so people could like sit on it like against the walls, and they wanted to get rid of those specific pews. And I think she was gonna charge me, but then she forgot, so I just got like free pews, you know.
Nice. You really came up on one.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I'm piecing it together, you're doing comedy, you have a background in producing concerts or band shows.
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm just going to make my own thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's also this idea of like, I wasn't even thinking about it like that at the time. You know, I technically started doing comedy in 2019. And then I went through a bad breakup, and I didn't want to be that comic on stage just processing my breakup. So I stopped doing comedy for a few months. And then when I was going to get back into it, the pandemic happened. And I didn't even dare to do any of like the online open mics or any of that. Yeah. So I really got into comedy like April of 2021. So a little over 2 years ago. And I was hitting the open mics, and I was doing the grind, and I didn't really feel like I was getting anywhere, right?
In terms of your skill or in terms of the career part of things?
I didn't understand the landscape of the scene when I first started. I didn't understand the inevitable hierarchy of things. I didn't understand how many comics there are. I didn't understand the different politics of each club. I didn't understand the different cliques. I didn't understand any of it.
Is the DIY band or music scene is it a different thing? Like, is your approach to
I feel as though the term scene can sometimes be fake.
Okay.
Like the music scene, the Chicago DIY scene. It's like people like to talk shit about the DIY scene, but there's no centralized hub.
Sure.
You know, and I feel as though if you're going to talk shit about the scene, you're really talking shit about the hosts. You're talking shit about the producers. You're talking shit about the people that put the events together, right? So that's one of the reasons like why I like to make West of California such a like enjoyable time, because it's like, you know, I'm introducing so many people to comedy, and if I can put this positive twist on it that says like fuck the politics, like fuck the hierarchy, like let's just have fun, then comedy's fun again, you know? But yeah, so it was like the show like was my way of like breaking more into it. But like chronologically, you know, like in 2021 I was doing the mics, you know, but I was living at home during the pandemic with my mom, so like I was commuting like an hour to the city like every day just to do mics, and it just really felt like a dead end after a while. And then Evelyn Troutman, shout out Evelyn, she lent me her camera like the beginning of 2022, because I used to do photography all the time, but I didn't have a camera. And then she lent me her camera, and I was like, holy shit, I love this. Like, I can do this again. So I bought my own gear, and I got more into photography and like taking photos for people's comedy shows. And that wound up being such a better way to network and connect with people. But then I realized, okay, this can only go so far, because comedy is not going to inevitably or always get me stage time. And I never wanted to be the photographer that's like getting stage time because they're the photographer. I never wanted it to be that thing. I always wanted the respect to be separate and equal. So I was like, how can I like show up as a comic? And I was like, oh, I can do a show. And comics, you know, love when people give them attention. you know, like it's just a fact, right? Yeah. And it's a good thing for me, and it's a good thing for them. And I had just been watching people's posters, and I had been looking around town, and I was just like, you know, why not just make this feel like a big movie poster, like a big like 1980s, just like, you know, like Mad Max, like just classic movie poster.
It is, and for those of you who aren't comedians listening, if you are not comedians listening, more often than not, when people make a poster, you've seen it. When people make a poster in comedy, it's like, all right, let me just go into Canva. Here's some names, put some stars and like a light or some shit. It'll be fine. Every single poster you make, you do a monthly show, right? I'm assuming you are the one who illustrates it. You sit down and you draw each comedian based off of a picture we send you, right?
Yeah, or I find, yeah.
And you make this beautiful fucking unique collage. Every flyer is unique. It has energy. It has care into it. Like, I'm assuming you like movies as well.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about the MCU and how it's starting to feel very corporate, very Disney, whereas something like A24 or Spider-Verse feels like, oh, these people really give a shit. And anytime I see your flyer specifically, or the shows, the way you handle it feels like someone who gives a shit. And it's just it's a real breath of fresh air. You share things, you post things. I know I'm just all on your dick right now, but like it's
I'll take it.
it's so good.
Thank you.
I can't help but gush over it. It's something that I just is really good.
So I have to admit, the first few shows I had an illustrator helping me out by the name of John Garrison. Shout out John. I'm gonna shout out everyone whenever their name comes up.
Sure.
Yeah, I was doing these drafts. I was doing like these whole really like detailed mock-ups, and then he was just kind of like remastering it, so to speak, and like, you know, just finalizing it. And I was like dishing out money to him all the time because I like to pay all the performers. I like to pay everyone that helps out on the show in any capacity that they're helping out. I like to pay my people, even if it's out of my pocket sometimes, but that's changed because the show's so successful. You know, like I can actually have the money to pay these people. Then it got to a point I'm like, you know, I have the talent to do this myself. Like, why aren't I just doing this myself? So all the posters since January, so the past 6 posters have been just entirely me.
And you're not feeling overwhelmed? Do you feel like you can still handle all of it?
I felt overwhelmed when I'm the photographer on my show too, like hosting, producing, blah, 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 like doing literally everything. When I have like a bartender or a photographer, just like a few extra hands, like I feel better. But West of California is such my baby that like
I can feel it.
It's like I don't really want to bring that many people on or like officially bring people on. Like if you go to like the description in the show page, it says MTR Shy and Co. Like it's just that company shifts, you know, because it's whoever's available and it's whoever's willing. And then if someone helps me out and they're a comic, I'll always give them a spot too. And yeah.
And I know you got a cameraman this last show that I was at. Thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is he going to be a consistent part?
Yeah.
of it?
So Justin and I, Justin Smith, he's a great videographer. He does all the stuff for Roast Battle Chicago too. He's a great resource. He's a great person. Like you said, that was the first time we did that, and he really liked it. So we're gonna start doing it monthly, and it's a good way to like we were saying about the posters, like it gives comics exposure, like it makes them feel important, and it rightfully so. Like I only put people on my show that I think deserve more recognition, you know? So when it comes to these clips, it's like I want them to be as good as Laugh Factory or Zanies, like if not better, you know? Because you shouldn't have, like I said earlier, like fuck the politics, like fuck the natural hierarchy. Like you shouldn't have to fight to, I mean, I guess I'm a booker now. I guess I'm a gatekeeper now, even though I don't want to be.
Yeah. It inherently comes with the.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I mean, there are people that, you know, have asked to be on the show, and then it's hard to get them on the show sometimes just because it's a monthly show, and like I'm the only booker, and like, you know.
People want something from you. It can.
Yeah, but I try to be as fair as possible, and I want to bring up and like give exposure to comics that maybe wouldn't otherwise get it or get it as quickly. You know.
I'm with you. I have one more question to wrap this all up.
Yeah.
And that is, what is your goal? What's the dream? Like, where are you trying to head?
So I mentioned earlier that I have 2 psychology degrees, but I went back to school for advertising, like for creative advertising, specifically like art direction. So like designing,
man over here. Okay.
Yeah. Like designing ads, like the visuals of it. That's why I'm so invested in the advertisements of this. Like I'm not an ad person. Like people go, oh, Mad Men. It's like I watched Mad Men once. You know, I'm not obsessed with advertising. It's just like seems like a natural way to make good money and like make art. And like you said, I do like film. I originally went to school for film. And I'm like, maybe one day like I can make films if like once I have like enough money. But I also love comedy now. I love my music. I love my photography. So it's really just about like when you say like where I want to go, it's like I just want to make things. You know, like I just want to bring people like. One of the reasons that I became a therapist or was going to be a therapist is because I wanted to help people, right? I wanted to make their lives better. And then I was just like, well, how can I help people from the macro? You know, so I was thinking about being like a social worker that like, you know, like helps larger causes and stuff. But then there's this artistic calling that I was like neglecting, right? So that's why in 2022 I got back into illustrating. I got back into photography. I went headfirst into comedy. Like I doing it all, like releasing music again for the first time in several years, because it makes me feel like I'm living. It makes me feel like I have purpose again. But also, like you said earlier, or asked earlier, it's just like, do I feel as though I have a larger support system? Yeah, because by investing in myself, I'm investing in the community, and there's a give and take and a natural uplifting. Yeah. So the end goal is like, I don't know my exact end goal, man. I just want like all the art I do to get better and better and better and better. I mean, a part of me wants a club one day, like to own like an actual club.
Yeah.
Another part of me just wants to be making movies. Another part of me is like, why can't I be making movies and owning a club? Like, you know, like why? Because as I said a few times, it's like when I get into something, I like to massively research it, you know? And I always think about like, what are people going to read on my Wikipedia page? And I've always respected the people when you go to their page and they're like 7 things, you know? And I want to be like 7 or 10 or whatever things on my Wikipedia page when people go to me. Cause I just think that's cool. And like, they say the full phrase for like jack of all trades is like jack of all trades and master of none, right? But sometimes it's better to be I'm butchering it, but essentially it's like the sentiment of like sometimes it's better to do multiple things than just one because you'll be happier, right? But sometimes people use that as like an insult, like you're not mastering what you're doing. It's like sometimes like my passions get neglected when I'm focusing on one, but I'm really getting better at like managing all of them and kind of proving to people that like, or more so even proving to myself, like I can do all this at the same time. Like these aren't just hobbies, like these are passions. Like the show's not just an outlet, it's a part of me. So like, why wouldn't I put like a really like prominent amount of time into the poster, or like a prominent amount of time into the videos, or like a prominent amount of time into producing the show itself? Because it's like, this is a representation of me. And I don't know. I don't believe in half-assing shit. And my apartment's a mess, but I don't believe in half-assing shit. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing where you go in your all of it. Because
yeah,
there's
thanks,
so much.
man.
I'm sure it's gonna be great.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, that's an interesting question because like I don't exactly know where I'm going. You know, I hope that with time, like, things will naturally align. I just feel as though if I keep going, they will, you know?
I can't wait for 5 years from now for you to look back on this and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right. Thank you for doing this. Let's take this picture.